Hey, Al.
Hey, Barry.
Why do barbarians like doing damage so much?
Why?
Well, it's all the rage. It's time for a Compelled Duel bonus episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second part of just so much of a Compelled Duel bonus episode. I'm Barry.
And I'm Al.
And we all know what's going on here. Al, take it away.
So, Morlin. Things are not good. You watched this Valoran war machine explode in front of you. You felt the concussive blast of a whole lot of force magic just hit you in the chest. And then you hear a number of people that you couldn't even begin to guess at yelling at various distances. There is this thick, cloying, rusty smell of blood in your nose. Your entire body feels like it is full of lead. It is so heavy and wrong. You open your eyes briefly, just out of instinct, and through your fluttering eyelids, you see Nora leaning over you. You can just barely feel her hands on your shoulders. She is yelling something you can't make out. Dark again. Something is moving you very sharply, and your eyes flutter open again, and you see Adhana over Nora's shoulder. She is just extremely blue in the face, actively sobbing. Nothing again. And then you open your eyes. You see the canvas ceiling of a big battlefield tent above you. You feel extremely weird and in kind of a lot of pain. As far as you can tell, it's like midday-ish from the light. It was earlier in the morning, the last time you were awake. What are you doing?
Staring up at the ceiling and slowly going, ow.
As you are doing that, very fast, kind of between one moment and the next, your field of vision goes from tent to ceiling to the furious face of your wife, just filling up your entire line of sight. Looking down at you through gritted teeth, Adhana says, "Good morning, sweetie."
Morlin blinks up at her and grimaces. Hello, love. You're going to have to help me get caught up on the situation. So far, my understanding is that I'm not dead, but I'm about to wish that I was.
Adhana is just grinning manically. Oh, then it doesn't sound like you need to be caught up. Sounds like we have an understanding.
Addie, please, I'm fragile.
I know. That's why we're about to have a conversation instead of me casting magic missile at you. And then she's gonna grab you by the arm and help you sit up.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot of broken ribs.
6 of them, in fact. And that's after the clerics were done with you.
Not my finest moment. Alright, you talk first, I talk second.
Oh, thank you for granting me that, Morlin. Thank you so much for doing me that courtesy.
I didn't mean it like... Addie.
Oh, don't you Addie me. No. First I'm going to yell at you as your strategist, and then I'm going to yell at you as your wife. How does that sound?
Like the emotional equivalent of having a war machine blow up in my face, so carry on.
Don't try to be cute. It's not working. She crosses her arms over her chest and looks at you and goes, "So, let's review. Remember when I said you had a 50% chance of dying when you went about your idiotic, ridiculous, half-assed plan that you cooked up in 2 minutes on the battlefield, Morlin?"
Yes.
Great. Do you remember all of the other things that I said when I was, begging you not to do the stupid thing that you did anyway?
Yes, in extreme detail. Are we still in the part where you're yelling at me as my strategist, or are you yelling at me as my wife now?
Oh no, now I'm yelling at you as your wife.
Good to know. I have a couple questions and concerns in that case. First of all, are you all right?
More or less. Glancing blows. Nora took the brunt of the damage getting you off of the battlefield. You'll have to apologize to her for that when she comes in to yell at you.
And the baby?
There's a long pause. She uncrosses her arms and kind of settles one hand on her stomach. It's early, so there hasn't been any kicking, but I checked with the cleric. We're fine.
Thank you for addressing the questions. Now we're on to the concerns. You should not have been out there.
Oh, go to hell. I am not some dainty porcelain doll that you get to just hide away because you've decided you know what's best for me. I am your chief strategist, and I am the most capable person in this camp apart from you. Of course I should have been out there.
I have known you long enough to know that you are the polar opposite of a porcelain doll, but you are my wife, and it is my job to look out for what's best for the both of us and for our family. Which brings up another question. Obviously, you knew last night because you didn't take that drink I offered you and then dragged Adriel out of the tent like you had something you needed to get off your chest. Exactly how long have you known?
Adhana does not look at you. She is looking at the floor, and you watch her jaw tense a little bit. And then she says, "I didn't want to jinx it while it was still early. I wanted to be sure that we had a shot before I brought it up to you, given everything else that the two of us are worried about right now. But that ship has sailed, and here we are."
You didn't answer the question, Adhana. How long have you known?
A month and a half, give or take.
Morlin grits his teeth, looks up at the ceiling of the tent, and just shakes his head. And you told my sister-in-law before you told me.
No, I told the healer that helped me through the last few times this happened before I told you, Morlin. Thanks.
The situation appears getting too dangerous. By turning those war machines around, we were able to stop the advance on the camp. We probably knocked them back on their heels a little bit. They're going to need time to reevaluate, and by the time that they're done doing that, there needs to be no more collateral in this camp than is absolutely necessary. Val and Adriel are going home in the morning, whether they want to or not. And you are going with them.
Like hell I am.
You are. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to help anymore. I'm not tying your hands. There are plenty of your divination abilities that are applicable at a far range. But it is too dangerous for you to be here right now, and when we lost the last one, it almost killed both of us, Adhana. Forgive me for not wanting to put either of us through that again. You are going home. You can go home as a favor to put your husband's mind at ease, or you can go home as an order from your commanding officer. Your pick.
Adhana reels back like she has been struck. And then her jaw sets very firm, and she nods to herself a couple times, and she says, "Right. As your chief strategist, yes, sir. And as your wife, you would do well to think very carefully about what you're going to say to me the next time we see each other. And then she turns on her heel and she leaves.
Morlin stares at the place where she just walked out of the tent, and then leans back against the headboard and goes, God damn it.
As you are looking at the entrance to this tent, where Adhana just walked out, one of the flaps starts to lift, and in walks your babyest sister. Nora has very obviously been, ugly crying. Her eyes are puffy, her cheeks are a little blue, she's got kind of that crusty look going on. She walks in, she does not look at you, she just walks over to the bed and just forcibly grabs your arm and, checks your pulse.
Morlin kind of scoffs and shakes her off, but then reaches out, grabs her hand, and squeezes it. I promise I'm alive. I understand I have you to thank for that.
Nora is still not looking directly at you. Yep, that's me. Just, the only person with a revivify spell that was out there. Great time to be me. She kind of, puts a hand on your back and says, lean forward, please. And whether you do or not, she shoves you forward a little bit.
I go along with her because resisting with my multiple broken ribs would hurt a lot.
Sure would. Speaking of, she is going to, feel along your back. You get the sense that a couple of the breaks were back there, and it gets confirmed to you when one of her fingers goes over one of them, and it hurts like a son of a bitch.
Okay.
Nora pauses, and then she says, yeah, that'll happen when a war machine that could have taken out a small village explodes in your face. And then she goes back to feeling along your back. There are a couple breaks back there.
Understandable, but we didn't exactly... easy. We didn't have a lot of options.
Not a lot, no. Although I'm sure if you had waited a second and asked for some input, the three of us could have come up with something that didn't get you killed.
We've all seen how fast those things move, Nora. By the time we sat around to talk about it, they would have rolled up on the camp. Would you rather have they killed me or Valoran?
I would have rathered neither.
Exactly. And that is the reason that I didn't want you involved in any of this. That is the reason that I pushed back so hard against Mother sending you out here. Because those are the types of decisions that you have to make in seconds when you're out there on that battlefield. I didn't want you having to make that choice. So I made it.
No, I just got to make the decision on the best way to get your unconscious body back to camp. And I had to make the decision on how to tell Val and Adriel what had happened to you. And I had to make the decision on who we had to write, just in case some bad shit happened while you were still unconscious. Those were my decisions. I know you want to act like this is all your responsibility, you want to be the big hero, but there are other decisions that need to be made, and I would prefer if you were around for them. She puts a hand on your chest and shoves you back against the headboard. As gently as she can to not, jar your ribs, but still not nicely. And she says, just... if I hadn't been there, you would still be dead. And Adhana probably would be too, because she wasn't going to leave you. So you can be as mad as you want that I'm here, but I am useful. I am a good person to have around in these situations. And I would really prefer if you would act like it.
He reaches up and wraps a hand around the arm that is pushing him back against the headboard, and just kind of squeezes at her wrist reassuringly. You are good to have around, Nora. You're smart, and you're strong, and you're a great fighter, and a pretty solid mage. And I'm really glad that you were there to save my ass. But as your big brother, I really wish that you didn't have to be the one that did it. As your commanding officer, I see you as a capable soldier and an invaluable asset. But as somebody who knows you, who actually knows you, I look at you and see all the things you're missing out on. Kimmerl knows Boreas is probably tearing his hair out right now back home, and I know how well you and Aaron have been getting along recently.
Nora blushes bright fluorescent blue as you say Aaron's name.
Morlin, in that very shitty older sibling way, smirks. So yeah, you're useful. You're great to have around. I'd be dead if you weren't. But it's not fun to think of all the things you're missing out on because you are here. This shit's all I've ever been good for. You're capable of better things. And it sucks knowing that you're stuck here.
Nora takes a very deep breath and brings, one hand up to wipe at her eyes. Love you too. And for what it's worth, I wish you weren't here either.
Don't know who I'd be if I wasn't.
Very gingerly, she wraps her arms around you from the side.
He's gonna hug her back and try really hard not to make pained noises at the broken ribs being jostled.
Nora pulls back and she says, I tell you to get some rest, but Val's pissed.
Yeah, he's outside waiting for you to tag him in, isn't he?
Oh yeah, Adriel had to make him stop pacing.
Alright, let's just draw the hug out. Give me a couple seconds to prepare for that.
From right outside the tent, you hear, I heard that.
Ugh. Nora, you're my baby sister and I love you. I suggest you run. I don't think you've ever seen the mad face before.
The mad face?
Count yourself lucky that you have never witnessed it. Go.
Okay. She's gonna squeeze you one more time.
Nora, my bones!
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go. And then Nora awkwardly shuffles out of your tent.
Morlin watches her go with a 1,000-yard stare, and then to the front of the tent calls, Alright, I know you're out there, do your worst.
One hand just comes through the flap of the tent, just a finger raised, and Val says, 1 minute. I'm getting my thoughts together. And then he walks in. Morlin, it is incredibly hard to get your brother angry. He's a very easygoing person. He is occasionally irritated, but actually angry is a pretty rare sight. And it is a sight that you are treated to today. There's a long moment where he just stands there and lets you sit with the reality of what you have done. He steeples his fingers in front of his mouth and says, All right. First of all, and then with a couple taps of his cane along the ground, he gets up beside the bed faster than you think he should be able to, and just gets down on your level and hisses, I'll be back for dinner, he said. We'll be fine, he said. Would you like the opportunity to explain yourself, Morlin?
Oh, good, the guilt. Channeling Mother, I see. It is worth noting that everybody else except me and Alasha got back okay. Speaking of which, how is she? Have we checked in on her?
Lady Dakarin is recovering smoothly, which is more than I can say for you because I'm about to strangle you back to death.
Aw, Val, that's not fair. Nora put a lot of work into bringing me back to life. It'd be like kicking over her sandcastle when we were kids.
Oh, now you're worried about Nora's feelings? Not before she had to resurrect you on the battlefield and then drag you home, but now you're worried. Cool. Just so we can cover our bases, are you also worried about Boreas and Adhana, who I'm going to have to write about this? You know, Mother made me promise to write back a postcard every day I was gone, and today's is gonna say, yeah, the weather's not great. I feel like I'm coming down with a little bit of a chest cold. Morlin died.
I'll tell you the same thing I told Nora. Somebody had to make a call, I made it. Everybody else here is still alive. That's something to show for it, right?
Yeah, barely. Nora and Adhana both had to be rushed off to the clerics with you when they got back.
Yes, which brings up another relevant point. You're going home in the morning.
A very interesting thing happens to Valoran's posture, where he just instantly puts the Grand Duke mask on, crosses his arms over his chest, and says, "Interesting idea. What makes you think that?"
Because I know the people that are going to be going back with you, and it's going to take you and Adriel to drag them out of here. Elisha is one of them. She is too hurt to keep going, and she is too stubborn to admit it. And the other one is Adhana, and she's pregnant.
There's a pause. Val's posture kind of softens, and he says, "What?" That's... Congratulations doesn't seem like the right word at this point.
No, it really fucking doesn't.
And then he's just gonna, sit down on the side of the bed. Well, shit. It is several years before this. Morlin, you are on leave. You are at a bar in Valental, presumably staring into the bottle that you have just ordered from the bartender. When, to your left, your brother settles onto the next bar stool over. He just flags down the bartender, gets a drink, and then drains half of it before he turns to look at you and says, "I heard."
Morlin's well through half the bottle that he just ordered, and does not look at Val. He's staring at the top of the table. It was a boy. Stillborn, nothing the clerics could do about it. Revivify spell didn't take. And I get that I'm an asshole for being here right now. I get that Adhana needs... You know, sometimes I get to thinking that Kimrel has a really fucked up sense of humor, that he gives me all this power. The ability to turn the tides of a war, the ability to save my country, but when it comes to doing anything in my own life, he just...
Val kind of brings his arms up and just crosses them on the bar top and says, "I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry. And if I could fix this for you, I would."
I wish I could fix it too. Our last few shots at starting a family have been hard, and we thought that this one was gonna... Maybe I should just stop assuming that there's a happy ending in this for any of us.
And that doesn't feel the least bit like you're setting up a self-fulfilling prophecy there? I understand how upset you are. And I can think of very few things that I wouldn't do to make this hurt less for you. But I think that you need to not be alone right now. And more than that, I think Adhana needs you.
Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be alone. Kimrel knows that there's precedence there for me doing stupid shit. And she's been through enough of this. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go be with her. I'll figure it out. I always do.
And you are back in your tent on this bloody battlefield outside of the city of Omagroth.
Morlin is just staring at his brother from where he is laying in this bed. It's established fact by this point, Val. The only thing I can do is win this war. I can't keep the people I love safe. I need you to help me do that. We'd both like to get Nora out of here, that much goes without saying. We're not going to, though. But Elisha and Adhana and the baby, they can't be here anymore. And they need someone with a gentler touch than me to help them understand that.
Val kind of reaches up and pinches the bridge of his nose, nods a couple times. Right. I'm handling it. And then he kind of stands up and dusts off the front of his shirt real quick. And then he's gonna lean forward and just clap a hand against your cheek, look you in the face very intensely, and say, "Get some rest. I have it handled." And he walks out.
Valoran, the following morning finds you up pretty early, packing up your carriage to head back down the road to Valental. Adriel is standing next to you, shifting sort of uncomfortably. In the wagon train behind your carriage, you see Elisha Dakarin slowly crawling her way up into a flatbed wagon full of bedrolls and blankets and things, laying down, looking very tired. And as you are standing there, from around the corner of the nearest tent, you feel a hand close vice-like around your elbow and yank you off to the side. This person that has grabbed you spins you around, and you are met with the pale, fear-stricken face of your baby sister. Nora looks deeply sad and deeply afraid as she stares you down.
Whoa. Hey, what's... He kind of looks her up and down to see what's going on. What's wrong?
What's... What's wrong? She takes a fleeting look over her shoulder and then turns back to you, eyes big and desperate. You are the only sane person left in this camp and you're leaving?
Val grimaces and then says, Lady Dakarin needs better medical treatment than she can receive here, and going back with us is faster than ordering another carriage. He grimaces a little bit more. Adhana has received orders that she is to take a leave of absence effective immediately. It's just logistics.
Logistics my ass, Val. I get that I am your kid's sister and you want to protect me, but one thing I'm not is stupid. We know what this pattern is. Both of us do. We've seen it 1,000,000 times. The stupid, unnecessary risk-taking, the pushing people away that are trying to help, the bending over backwards to take self-destructive decisions and somehow make them morally superior. We know what this is, and She stares down at her feet and kind of kicks at a big clod of mud on the ground. And I've been praying. I have been praying my fucking heart out ever since I saw Morlin go down out there. You know just about as well as I do that Kimrel doesn't tend to give us any clear answers about anything, but I have got this feeling. It's like this weight, like a stone in my gut that just says I am about to lose someone that I love a lot. I won't come with you. Because I won't leave him. Because we know he can't be alone right now. But if you care about this, if you really care about us, Val, you will find a way to do something about this. Because this is not sustainable. And we've already seen how it ends.
If I care... Nora, my hands are tied. Adhana needs to leave. She won't if Adriel and I aren't dragging her kicking and screaming, although we should maybe keep that under wraps. This is the thing that I can do. Nora, I am not a general. This is not my area of expertise, and I would forgive you for having this escape your notice, but I am not the Archduke yet. I am doing what I can do.
Nora bursts into tears. She's about a full head taller than you and twice as wide, but you are struck again by that hideously specific grief of seeing a child in armor. Nora curls in on herself like she's giving herself a hug, chokes on a sob, and then swallows really hard. She rolls her shoulders back and visibly puts herself back together. I don't know what to do. You're the person that talks to people. You've got to be able to say something. You're the only one Mother listens to.
Hey, come here. He's gonna give her a big hug. I'm sorry I snapped. It's been a long couple of days, and I do not feel well, and I'm not excited about having to be in a carriage with Adhana's justifiable anger about the situation. If I think of anything else I can do, you know I'll do it. Right? You know that?
Nora's lower lip wobbles, but then you see her clench her jaw super hard, in pretty much exactly the same way Morlin used to do as a kid when he was trying not to cry. Yeah, I'll keep our idiot brother from dying again. And you'll do something to keep the rest of us from dying. I know you will. You're the person we count on, you always have been. She yanks you even harder into this hug. It is bone-crushing and too tight. Just be safe, okay? I'll see you soon.
Yeah, of course. He's gonna, before he pulls back from the hug, just kind of put a hand on the side of her head and kind of bring her in for a little kiss on the temple. I'll handle it. I have it handled. It's all gonna be fine. Keep yourself safe. Keep a level head if you can, because Kimrel knows Morlin's not going to. I love you, alright?
Yeah, I love you too. And then you see Nora's eyes lock on something over your shoulder, and she takes a step back. From out of this big main square of tents in the camp, you see your sister-in-law walking across the muddy grass. Adhana looks deeply pissed. And by the time you have turned around to say anything else to Nora, she has disappeared. Adhana stomps across this square over towards where Adriel is standing by the carriage. Adriel reaches up to squeeze at one of her shoulders, and Adhana just shrugs her off, fully seething. Not too far behind her, you see Morlin walking up to your carriage, and he gets her by the shoulders, turns her around, and just leans down and kisses her on the forehead. Roll insight.
Sure thing. 18, actually.
Morlin looks like he's still in a lot of pain and trying very hard to look like he is more okay than he is. Adhana, despite her best efforts, kind of leans into that kiss he places against her forehead and reaches out and kind of grabs at the front of his robes. But then lets him go, pushes him off, and stalks off into the carriage.
To himself more than anything, Val says, "Well, this promises to be a comfortable ride." And then he's gonna shoot Morlin a quick 2-finger salute and gingerly hop up into the carriage.
You actually see Adriel go over and engage in a quick conversation with Morlin before she gets in after you. They seem to be putting their heads together and discussing something very seriously.
Val raises an eyebrow at Adhana and says, "I don't know whether to be jealous or relieved that I'm almost entirely sure they're discussing you instead of me this time."
Adhana doesn't say anything. Her fists are just clenched up in her skirts, and she is staring down at the floor of the carriage. Outside the window, you see Adriel reach up, grab Morlin on one of his shoulders and squeeze, and kind of go up, kiss him on the cheek, and then pile into the carriage after the rest of you. Your whole caravan sets off back down the road, and the inside of your carriage is uncomfortably quiet for a really long time. But eventually, Adhana's fists curl up even tighter in the fabric of her skirts, and she leans to look out the back window. So, none of us are pretending that this is okay, right? None of us are pretending that this is acceptable?
Val, grimacing, says, well, I see where he's coming from. He's concerned about the baby and everything.
She just stares lasers into the bottom of this carriage. Val, we both know what this is. He's concerned about the idea of the baby. He's concerned about the idea of our perfect little family. And he's not concerned about the fact that he might fucking die again.
Do you honestly think that's not something I've considered? If I entertain that possibility for too long, I will drive myself insane, Addie. So, no, I understand. He's concerned about the baby, and he'll make up some grand apology to you later when he gets leave next.
She leans into Adriel, who wraps an arm around her shoulder and squeezes her very tightly, but her eyes never leave yours. And now he's alone. We left him alone.
He's not alone. He's in a camp full of people. He's got Reese and Eamon and Nora.
It is Reese and Eamon's job to tell him whatever he wants to hear. And Nora is young. And Nora is scared. And Nora is all of the excuse that he needs to let himself die again. I don't have a more polite way to put this to you, Val. This is gonna kill him. Again. And where does that leave me? The hand that has been braced around Adriel's shoulder comes down and presses to her stomach. Where does that leave both of us? Val, you are not in the carriage anymore. You are a teenager with your footsteps reverberating off of the walls in a long hallway in the palace in Velenthal. You are rounding the corner to head back to your quarters for the night when you hear the sounds of pretty familiar, muffled arguing coming from your father's study.
Val looks longingly down the hallway in the direction of his bedroom, but then sighs with the knowledge that someone needs to know what kind of mental and emotional state his parents are in. So he's gonna walk closer, try to eavesdrop.
Alright, go ahead and roll me perception, please.
23.
Yeah, okay, you hear this conversation in digital surround sound. From the other side of this door, you hear the voice of your father, who has always been a very studious and soft-spoken man, saying, I can understand where you're coming from, Ileana, but he's just a boy. And your mother cuts him off, very harshly. And if you had the foresight to actually pay attention to your son's training sessions, you would see that that boy is single-handedly capable of taking down an entire Valduran platoon. You can keep dancing around, playing at political overtures by all means. Go ahead, keep playing this losing game that you've been playing for the last century. Or, we can take the assets that we have been given and put them to use. Kimmerl knows it would be a smarter idea to point Morlin at the Valdurans and let him actually pursue his talents rather than letting him remain here and continue to be a thorn in my side. But no, you're too willing to let your sentiment get in the way of good sense.
Val has heard quite enough of that. He's gonna try and leave and go find Morlin.
As you do that, roll stealth, please.
That's a 10.
Your mother has eyes in the back of her head. That's not gonna do it, buddy.
I think with hearing that, Val's a little upset. His blood pressure's a little high. I think his cane just fully slips out of his grasp and clatters onto the floor. Shit.
Before you can think to collect yourself and run away, the door to your father's study swings open. In the doorway, you see your mother looking very incensed. And just past her shoulder, you see your father sitting at his desk with one hand coming up to pinch at the bridge of his nose. Your mother sees you, blinks, and then reaches up to smooth her hair down and smooth down the front of her skirts before she reaches out and gets your face in both hands. Valoran, sweetheart, you should not be up this late. You know how bad the night air is for you.
Yes, Mother, I'm sorry, I know. I just couldn't help but overhear.
She frowns and just pets the hair back from your face. It's nothing you need to worry about, darling. Your father and I were just discussing strategy.
I heard what you were discussing. I think it would be a bad idea to send Morlin out to the front. Despite his magical abilities, I don't think he would handle the environment well. And I think he would be less effective than you are maybe presuming. And I think worrying about him would distract Adhana and I sufficiently from our studies that it would be an unwise decision in the long run.
Your mother gives you a look that can only be described as supremely patronizing. And you feel the hand she still has pressed against your cheek push in a little harder. Oh, you're a sweet boy. You want to protect your little brother, you always have. But you know just as well as the rest of us how powerful he is. I mean, look at last week when he got irritated at Adhana for poking fun at him and he blighted my entire rose garden.
Yes, and 2 days ago, Adhana cast a fireball in the courtyard, but I noticed that you're not suggesting sending her out to battle, Mother.
Well, of course not. Adhana has her part to play in all of this, and she's perfectly content with it. Besides, she's getting along so well with that nice boy from the cadet branch of House Dakaran that was up here a couple months ago. They've been riding, you know. And you know what your duties are.
Val flinches.
Your mother does not acknowledge your discomfort. You are going to inherit the throne of this nation. And as the second son of the family, it's Morlin's duty to ensure that you don't inherit this war along with it.
And being that I'm going to inherit, shouldn't it be a priority that my studies are not disturbed and that in situations such as these, you at least consider my strategic arguments, given that they are examples of the sort of decisions that I will have to make for the rest of my life? If there are holes in my logic, then fine, but shouldn't you at least think about it so you can tell me where the holes in my logic are?
Your mother makes this pinched, stilted expression that you think is what she must imagine that someone who is truly remorseful looks like. Oh, darling, it's not that your logic is flawed. It's that your heart's too big. Effective leadership requires the death of sentiment, Valoran. And besides, you shouldn't worry about Morlin's perspective on this whole thing. You know how eager he is to help.
Mother, please just...
Sweetheart, you shouldn't get so upset. It's bad for your heart. Just go to bed. We'll talk about it later, all right?
No,
Valoran, go to bed.
Yes, Mother.
And you are back in the carriage. From what you can tell, you seem to have dissociated for several hours at this point. In the seat opposite you, Adriel has one arm slung around Adhana's shoulders, and Adhana seems to have devolved from grief-stricken worry into petty rage. She has broken into Adriel's craft bag and is just crocheting angrily. She's like halfway through a baby booty, just mutinously grumbling. What the fuck does he even think he's gonna do without me? He doesn't even remember to not put milk in his coffee in the mornings. And I don't need the divination magic to know that. I'm just the only fucking person around him that remembers that he's lactose intolerant. But no, he's gonna win the war.
Val reaches up to pinch the bridge of his nose and says, "Mind your blood pressure, Addie."
She points her crochet hook at you accusatorily. Hypocrite!
Acknowledged. Carry on. Val's gonna turn to Adriel. We have to, stop in Omagroth proper to pick Tristan up, right?
Yes, assuming he's been able to get off the privy in that time.
I think we should stay there for a few days. I have some letters to write. We cut to not quite a week later, about 6 days or so. Morlin, you are on a battlefield again. You are with Reese and Eamon and Nora, and you are surrounded by Valduran soldiers. What are you doing?
Is there any way I can angle a 30-foot cube that's not going to hit Reese or Eamon or Nora?
Yeah, you can do that.
Cool, I do that and I cast Abidalzim's Horrid Wilting at 8th level. So everybody within 30 feet of us is going to have to roll a DC 18 Constitution saving throw.
Yeah, alright, I'm just gonna roll a bunch, an average amount. Ugh! I didn't roll good. Yeah, got a natural 1 in there, and a bunch of them were pretty low, so that is not gonna average out to an 18. Do your worst.
Well, my worst is 12d8 necrotic damage. I'm gonna use 1 sorcery point to do Empowered Spell to reroll 5 of these. So, that totals out to a crisp 62 damage.
So every soldier within this cube dies instantly.
He takes a couple steps back to group up with everyone else and kind of looks around wildly and goes, alright, so we don't have our normal analytics on the situation. Has anybody seen what the Valduran line's looking like?
Everyone else is also kind of looking around, very on edge. Eamon kind of hypes up, "General, all due respect, when would we have seen the line?"
Alright, listen, I am doing my best. I'm working with what I got. Anybody wanna, make me feel better about the whole situation and just tell me, oh, we have an 85% chance of pushing the line back at least a mile before the end of the week?
Reese Tormer, wiping blood off of his axe, says, "I predict that we have a 100% chance that one of us says we wish Adhana was here before the end of the day."
Hey, Reese?
Yes, sir.
You're a jackass.
And you're stuck with me.
What would I have to roll to get a good idea of where the fighting's going?
Roll survival.
12?
You feel like you've pushed the line back a little. You're definitely further into no man's land than you've been able to get before. You don't know how else to really judge it. There aren't a lot of people in camp that can do, the kind of far-seeing thing that Adhana could do, but you feel like you've made progress.
How's everybody else with me looking?
Nora's gotten clocked in the head pretty hard. Reese has gotten stabbed at least once, but he's a hardy kind of guy. He can take it. Eamon is kind of flexing his wrist in a way that's concerning. They're all pretty beat up. You could probably push a little bit more out of them, but...
No more Alashas. I'm grabbing everybody else in my party and hauling them back towards camp.
When you get back, one of the lower-ranking, new recruits comes up to you and says, Duke, General, sir, a letter for you.
Morlin takes the letter without looking at it and starts to tear it open as he elbows Reese in the side and smirks. Alright, I'm manifesting my best life here. This is a comprehensive dissertation from my mother about everything she's ever done to traumatize.
The letter's from Adriel.
Fuck me.
It's not long. The entire contents of it are Morlin, comma, on a separate line, the word urgent underlined. We're in Omagroth. Val needs you to come here as soon as possible, underlined. Best, Adriel.
He stares down at the letter, looks back up at Reese, eyes wide, and goes, You, Eamon, Nora, my tent, now.
Reese goes from exasperated to deadly serious in the space of a second, does a little salute, says, Yes, sir, and goes to round Eamon and Nora back up.
Once they're all in the tent, Morlin starts pacing. Alright, so the situation is that Reese and I are going to Omagroth proper post-haste.
Nora pipes up, What?
There are some things that I need to handle. Nora, you need to stay here. You're the best combat medic on this battlefield, and given how hard we are pushing back the Valduran line, we're gonna need your help. I am about to say something that chills me to my very core. Eamon, you are in charge while I am gone.
Eamon, who has not been really listening for the last couple seconds, jolts upright. I'm what?
For Kimrel's sake, man, don't make me say it again. You know what the battle plan is. You know what we're shooting for here. Just keep pushing on that Valduran line until I get back. It'll be a couple days. Eamon, can you promise me a couple days without the whole country going to shit? I believe in you.
Sir, if you could just define a couple for me, just give me a number.
I can't. Soon. I'll be back soon. Everything's on the papers, Eamon. You just have to read the instructions, okay? I have a detailed tactical outline right here on the war table. You can do this.
Yeah.
Morlin grabs Nora by the elbow and yanks her over and leans down to whisper in her ear, You're gonna have to help him do this.
Yeah, I got that from context clues. And you and Reese pack up your shit and head out for Omagroth proper. It's getting pretty dark by the time you ride up to the Baron's estate. The road is not super comfortable, and I would assume you're kind of operating at a low-level anxiety the entire ride.
Low level, that's cute. High levels of anxiety, in fact. So high that as soon as they make it up to the manor, Morlin jumps off his horse and just goes straight inside without knocking or otherwise announcing himself.
Adhana meets you in the foyer.
He walks up and, with shaking hands, kind of gets her by the shoulders. What happened? Is it his heart again? What?
He's okay. It's fine. We need to talk about some things.
What do you mean he's okay? The letter said... Oh, that bastard. You know, if he'd wanted me up here in a hurry, there were better ways to do it than... Never mind. Anyway, I've been thinking over the last few days that maybe after the baby's born, we should move our permanent residence to the Summer Palace, because I've got this theory that I'm working on, that when my mother touches an infant, she immediately gives it a complex for life.
Adhana tries to interrupt you, just goes, Morlin.
I just think there's something to the theory. I mean, look at all of us. We've all got fucking complexes. Val's chronically nice even when he doesn't have to be. I would sooner literally die than disappoint people. Jorana's got whatever she has going on. Nora's scared of her own shadow. Hell, Boreas has such a bad complex he doesn't even know it's a complex. He just thinks it's his personality.
Morlin.
You know, actually, I don't think it has to do with my mother touching an infant. She's got an area of effect, because Ulrich Shakrana came over for dinner once when I was like 25, and he still goes to therapy twice a week. God, I wish that were me.
Morlin.
He finally stops and blinks really hard as he realizes that he's been on a tangent. Sorry, it's just that I didn't have the meltdown that I thought I was gonna have to have just now. And I needed to take all that adrenaline and channel it into a different anxiety for a second. What's going on?
Adhana grimaces for a second and then says, Okay, you have to promise not to get mad.
Addie, I really don't like when you start conversations with that.
And then she starts dragging you up the stairs.
As he's being hauled up the stairs, Morlin looks over at her and raises an eyebrow. Are you still mad at me?
Adhana takes her free hand that is not towing you by your arm and kind of wiggles it noncommittally.
Cool, great, awesome. Is the fact that we're sort of still fighting related to the thing that you don't want me to be mad about? Adhana, I'm on my hands and knees. I am begging you. An answer?
Well, I don't have the most comprehensive picture of the situation, so I would rather we all got together and actually talked about it, so just wait a second.
What situation?
As you're saying that, she tugs you the rest of the way through this hall and opens the door. You find yourself in a relatively well-appointed guest suite. Valoran and Adriel are both sitting at a desk in this room. Val is writing something busily, and Adriel is kind of looking over his shoulder and making notes.
Morlin actually does go a little stiff and cold as he looks in at Adriel and kind of crosses his arms over his chest. Adriel, minor note. Next time my presence is required for something quickly, you don't have to bring my brother into it and scare the living dog shit out of me.
Adriel grimaces and starts to say, well, the thing was... And before she can finish, Val, without looking up from what he's writing, says, I said it was fine, things are urgent.
Valoran, I think you and I both know that I have drastically different reactions to something that is urgent and something that is urgent that involves you. So thanks for almost giving me a heart attack because I thought you'd had one. What do you want?
Val winces, and then turns this paper that he's been scribbling at around, slides it across the desk, and looks up at you with a tight, pinched smile. Just a signature, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm gonna just take a cursory glance at the papers. What do I have to roll for that?
Investigation or history, whichever one's higher.
My history's higher, I'll do that. 15?
You are looking at papers calling for a temporary ceasefire on the front line that you've been fighting on for several months now, and a weapon-free environment in which to have peace talks. As you're looking at this, Val reaches out, puts a hand on your arm, and gives you another one of those tight smiles. I'm sorry to scare you. I appreciate your concern. We needed you up here as quickly as possible.
The temperature in this room notably lowers as Morlin looks down at these papers and loses control of his magic for a second, and a little flash of a skeletal chill touch hand appears at the end of both his hands. What is the meaning of this?
What does it look like? Father handed over some negotiatory power. Several of the Valoran generals have agreed. And I just need some backup from the commander of Australian forces.
You know damn well that these people do not want to negotiate, Val. I guess I underestimated your fortitude. You were only on the front lines for what, a few days? And you're already tripping over yourself trying to give them what they want. Clearly I won't be signing these.
This tight, pinched smile drops off of Val's face, and under his free hand, still on the desk, you see creeping, shining frost spread out under his fingers as his own magic reacts to the situation. Well, all the arrangements have already been made. This is going forward whether you want it to or not. I am giving you the opportunity to participate so your concerns can be heard. You can either sign the papers upon the request of your brother, or you can sign them under the orders of your Grand Duke, General Valcyne.
Morlin braces both hands on the desk and kind of leans forward into his personal space. I think with how heightened both of their emotional states are right now, their magic is like clashing against each other where their hands are both placed on the wood. Do it. Give me an order. Stop being my big brother and start being the goddamn Grand Duke. Do it.
Go ahead and roll me an insight check.
Dirty 20.
As you are leaning over this desk, Val gives you another one of those pinched smiles and kind of clenches one fist on the desk. You notice that when you got up in his space, he didn't get up from his chair to meet you, which is kind of weird. And I think that kind of startled you out of your own head for the first time since you got here, enough to realize that, like, he looks tired. Whether or not you agree with this whole situation, you kind of get the impression he hasn't been sleeping because he's been trying to organize it. You can see just a little bit the hand that he still has on these papers that he slid over to you is trembling. Adriel, who is still leaning over his shoulder, kind of reaches over and just squeezes at his upper arm. And he looks at you again with that big, tight smile and says, I don't want to throw orders around if I don't have to. I would much rather this all go smoothly and productively. Yes, I was only on the front for a few days. I don't have the context, I don't have the combat expertise. I am walking into these talks as a statesman, not as a general. We need someone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the other side of things. And if that person has to be Adhana, then it will be. But I think you would much rather actually be involved.
Fucking unbelievable, Val. Unbelievable. Morlin yanks the papers out of his hand, signs them, and then turns around and walks out of the room without another word.
Okay, where are you going?
Anywhere that's not here. Down the hall, back downstairs, I don't know.
I think you start heading back down the hall and downstairs, and Adhana catches you in the hallway.
He whips around and stares down at her, looking extremely betrayed. Tell me that you're not backing him up on this.
Adhana gives you kind of a betrayed look back and says, after all the shit I've seen in this war, you died in front of me. Yes, I'm backing him up on this.
Then what did I die for, Addie? What did I die for?
The opportunity to have these fucking talks, Morlin. You destroyed their war machines. You decimated their troops. We actually have some fucking leverage, and we're trying to take advantage of it. And if you could get a good enough angle from up on your high horse to look at the actual situation, you would understand that.
High horse or no, maybe we should consider that I'm the only one that has a good angle on all of this. We've got them on the run. They are scared. We can end this now without any bullshit peace talks, without any capitulation to their stupid demands. We can end it.
You only get lucky so many times. So who dies next? She puts a hand over her stomach. How long does this last?
As long as it has to. I would have expected you of all people to understand that. I would have expected you of all people to be on my side. My mistake. Don't wait up. I think Reese and I are going to stay down in town tonight. And he turns around and walks out of this manor house.
You stay at an inn in Omagroth's hospitality district for the evening. And when you get back in the morning, hungover and still pretty angry, I'm sure, you are greeted with a whole bunch of carriages and your sister-in-law standing out on the front porch, smoking like a chimney with her arms crossed over her chest.
Morlin walks over to where she's standing, but does not make eye contact with her. Can I bum one?
She wordlessly hands a cigarette to you.
Don't tell Addie. I told her I quit 6 months ago, and things are bad enough.
Adriel smirks a little bit. She won't hear it from me. And after a second, she says, "You're being a real dick, you know?"
Yeah, you've been telling me the same thing pretty much daily since I was about 30. Is that meant to change my perspective on the situation?
We've all put a lot of thought into this. We've considered the ramifications, and we have all decided to at least try. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's bad. She pauses, takes another drag off her cigarette. I know you, and I know your heart's in the right place. But don't let your stubbornness get in the way of all the good we could do here.
He finishes his smoke and grinds it out under his heel. That's the thing, Adriel. I'm starting to think that we all have different definitions of good. He turns around and walks inside.
Adriel goes with you and starts heading off towards like a dining space. I'm assuming you follow her. And as you walk in, you see a table full of maps and various papers. On one side of it sits your brother Valoran, and on the other side sit two older, grizzled Volduran men and a younger, like late 20s, early 30s, maybe, equivalently, Volduran woman, red hair piled on top of her head, neatly trimmed red beard, and she is making notes on a little clipboard.
Hope we're not interrupting.
Adriel laughs a little bit and takes the seat on Val's right. And Val, flipping through a little packet of papers, says, "Good morning, Morlin. Good to see you. You're only 2 hours late."
Yeah, well, at least I showed up. Who am I to refuse an order from the Grand Duke?
Val makes a face, and then one-handed takes his cane and kind of sweeps the chair to his left out from the table. Take a seat, I want you to look over there. And then he looks up at the Voldaren generals, and his lip curls a little bit. Proposal.
Certainly. I'm sure they brought something equitable to the table. He's gonna sit down in the chair next to Val and look over these papers, giving the entire Voldaren delegation the stink eye the whole time.
Val makes a gesture at this Voldaren delegation and says, "It is nothing short of my pleasure to introduce General Maximus Greyriver, General Augustus Frostjaw, and the lovely Agrippina Blackshield." Both of these generals just kind of nod cordially at you, but this young woman with the red hair does a little kind of finger wave and writes something down. General Frostjaw says something to her in Gnomish, which you don't speak, and you watch Adriel's shoulders stiffen a little bit. Val purses his lips for a second, and then slides you a bunch of these papers to look over. You see the original pitch by this Voldaren envoy. It is extortionate. It is extremely unreasonable. They wanted pretty much all Asturian territory north of an arbitrary line drawn above Omagroth. They wanted exclusive mining rights. They wanted the resources to house themselves, to mine pretty much everything they would need to extract every metal that they wanted and go home scot-free. Just absolutely ridiculous shit. You see that this has been negotiated down. The updated map has the same line drawn, but it has spaces carved out. Spaces that you know to be most of the land that north is too cold for people to live in year-round. They've kept the mining rights, but not any extra resources, and in exchange, it seems that Val has offered up assistance from Asturian mages on their technology. But it does come with an immediate ceasefire. No one else has to die.
Morlin takes a cursory glance at these documents, and then flicks his eyes up over the top of them at the Voldaren delegation. General Greyriver, nice to finally talk with you in person. We got a messenger from you a couple days ago. Just wanted to check in with you. Did his head make it back all right?
General Greyriver's lip curls. And in Dwarvish, which luckily you speak, he says, "Yeah, it got back all right. Courteous of you to send it back so his family had something to bury."
Courteous of you to bury mines in the ground that permanently disfigured a dear friend of mine. After all, we get what we give. Looking over this agreement, though, I'm seeing just one thing that I have a concern about. Valoran, if I have your leave, of course.
Val's jaw tightens, and he looks at this Voldaren delegation, and you can practically watch him thinking out the fact that he cannot tell you, "No, don't fucking open your mouth," in front of these people without undermining you as a negotiator and the three of you as a team more than you already have been by you showing up 2 hours late. So he gives you a very pinched smile and says, "By all means, General."
Well, I mean, logistically, a lot of this makes sense. After all, you came over here looking for natural resources. Exclusive mining rights, that seems like a decent thing to bargain for. Largely uninhabitable territory, not a terrible thing for us to lose. I am wondering, though, where in here are the reparations for the sack of Ilneus, which was perpetrated just so the Voldaren Navy could have a place to land? 4,000 people died in the siege, and then a further, I believe, 10,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, I'm not an expert, obviously, died in the sickness that followed. Is there anything in these arrangements to answer for that?
From Val's other side, Adriel warningly says, "Morlin, And down the table, General Frostjaw raises a hand and says, "Now, I don't believe sickness in an Australian city is our fault."
Oh, is it not? Tell that to the entire orphanage's worth of children that died in Ilneus when a couple of seasick Valduran soldiers got off on the docks.
General Grey River gives you this wide, bright politician smile and says, "A very unfortunate accident, we can all agree."
Oh, of course. And the war machines, and the landmines, and the repeated incursions into a land you have no history with or claim to. Those are all unfortunate accidents, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, General, but what you're proposing here is that the people and the nation that you have decimated in your pursuits are not entitled to recompense. Because it was just an unfortunate accident. Yes?
Next to you, Val holds up a hand sharply. "Morlin, that's enough."
Oh, is it? I was under the impression that I was being allowed to participate so my concerns could be heard.
And now we have all heard them. Do you have anything else to add?
Just that I won't sign any kind of permanent ceasefire until Vokvolder agrees to fix what they've broken. Other than that, carry on. He stands up, shoves his chair back in roughly, and storms out of the room. Valoran, we pick up with you several hours later in your guest suite at the Baron of Omagroth's manor house, sharing a brandy and a well-deserved gripe session with your childhood friend and bodyguard, Tristan Tormare, who has recently overcome his gastrointestinal distress and made it up to Omagroth to meet you. He's a big dude, well over 6 feet tall, stacked like an IHOP breakfast special, curly brown hair, slate gray eyes. He's about halfway through a drink before he slams it down on a table and goes, "You did what?"
Val takes a very large swig of his own drink and then says, "Well, my brother died. Let me say it again. So my choices seemed a little limited."
And so your thought process after that was, yeah, sure, I'm gonna let Morlin come to the table and talk to the big important political people.
Val scrubs both hands over his face and just says, "Tristan, if you weren't so nice to look at, I would have you thrown in the stocks. Do you have any idea how aggravating you are when you think you can say I told you so?"
He flashes you this big, crooked grin. Not irritating enough for you to not want me around. And then he leans forward and kisses you.
Val snorts and brushes him off. Keep testing me, we'll see about that."
I'm gonna need you to roll me an insight check, buddy.
15.
Okay, so you got just enough to unlock this cutscene. You are standing on a balcony outside the palace at Velental. You are in the equivalent of your mid-20s, looking back through several open French doors at where a party is going, and people are dancing and musicians are playing. And a shadow falls over this balcony where you're standing as your brother, more than a little tipsy, staggers onto the balcony and leans on the banister next to you.
Val reaches out to brace him. "Whoa, easy there."
She said yes. mother is pissed.
You knew she would be.
Weird how her being pissed is not making this night less amazing, Val. Holy shit. He rakes a hand back through his hair and starts pacing, which is a pretty familiar experience with your brother. But this big, jubilant, open-mouthed smile is something totally new. Thank you. Thank you. You are the only reason this happened.
Don't give me that credit. Young love will have its way. Val kind of shakes him a little bit. And besides, how could I not? You're my little brother, and I love you. And you've been so supportive of my marriage, unorthodox though it may be.
He laughs again and leans into you and rests his head on your shoulder. Well, yeah, how could I not? You know there's nothing I'd prioritize over you, right?
Val snorts, shakes him again. Okay, you're drunk, let's get you to bed.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm gonna marry the girl of my dreams, Val.
You sure are. Come on, come on.
The door to this guest suite swings open, and your little brother is standing there, putting off an air of deep, visceral wrath that you have never seen from him before.
No, please, come in. Val pinches the bridge of his nose and then looks at Tristan, nods at the door, and says, "Give us the room."
Tristan gives you a weighted look, like, are you okay? But stands up, brushes off the front of his armor, and leaves. Morlin shuts the door behind him and just stares straight ahead. This is the thanks I get. After everything they've done, this is the thanks I get. You've got one chance to start talking, Val.
Morlin, I don't want to have this fight with you. I'm tired. I'm sore. I am very angry. So if you force me to have this argument, you won't like what happens.
Oh, and there's the rub, Val, isn't it? You have always had the privilege of watching things play out the way you would like.
Oh, Val stands up. He gets to his feet like a fucking cobra, with his hand clutched around the head of his cane, and just hisses, "Oh, I do not want to hear that from you today. You have no idea what the last few days have been like for me. If I could give you the feeling for one day of what it's like to have a shithead little brother."
You say like I don't have a shithead little brother.
You have Boreas. I have a shithead little brother who walks into meetings where he has been asked for his expertise and throws a tantrum and upends everything that I've been working on for days. Do you have any idea how hard it was to get them talked down from their original offer? To justify not making our people build homes for these bastards as payment for not being blown up? And then you walk in ruffling feathers and breaking things just because things aren't going your way. And I am the one who has to fix it, as usual. He throws his free hand up and just breaks off, forcing down a cough. I am not going to stand here while you tell me about the thanks you get.
No, of course, you'd rather play the martyr. Don't! Don't act like I don't know what you're about to do. And for fuck's sake, don't act like you have to justify it to me. You're doing what any good statesman should. You're playing a numbers game. Lives lost versus advantage gained. And why shouldn't you? You have never had to be on the side of the equation that's soaked in the blood of people you care about.
That is not fair.
Go ask Alasha how fair it is. She's here, isn't she?
Val sits back down, just clenches his fist on the arm of the chair. None of us asked for this. All I am trying to do is prevent decades, centuries of more pointless damage. Why don't you go ask Alasha what purpose she thinks what happened to her served in the end?
You do not get to pitch those sort of fucked up thought experiments to me. Not when you haven't spent years of watching your friends get blown up and shot and dying bloodily and pointlessly. Not when you haven't... I don't expect you to get it. It's not like you and your wife have ever tried to have children.
Val puts his head in one hand and just rubs at his forehead. Now that's a rude assumption. Adriel and I make a good faith effort once every decade or so. Very little eye contact involved, lots of lying back and thinking of Ashraria.
Oh, of course. Am I laughing? Val, do I look like I think this is funny?
No, but then you never do.
I will not bring my child into this world with a Valduran boot on his throat. I will not make my kid the heir to a war. I will not do what Mother did to us.
So why can't you see that that is exactly what I am trying to stop? We agree to the terms, we sign the papers.
And they answer for nothing. 200 years of bloodshed. 200 years of your people dying pointlessly, and they answer for nothing, Val.
I understand that you have an inflated sense of your own capabilities, but let's be honest with each other for a moment. We cannot win this war.
And at least some of us are willing to fight it anyway.
How many more Alashas will it take to make you understand that sometimes you just need to suck it up and bow out gracefully? Or is it going to take more? Are you going to keep throwing yourself into losing battles until the shit takes everyone?
It won't.
What happens when it takes Nora, Morlin?
It won't.
What happens when it takes Adhana? The baby?
He just stands there silently and looks at you, like a deep, raw wound has just been torn open. But he doesn't say anything.
Val coughs, clears his throat, shakes his head, and he gets up, picks up the paperweight or whatever that Morlin just tossed off his desk, and puts it back down firmly. You don't have to agree with what I'm doing. You don't even have to understand it. That's a benefit that comes with the fact that I'm the Grand Duke, and you are not. Do you know how long I've wished for an opportunity to end this war? How often I've thought of it? The idea that you or Nora would fall out here has haunted my nightmares for years, Morlin. The idea that I would get the news and I wouldn't even be granted the dignity of grieving properly the way everyone else who has lost someone in this war has been allowed to do. Because Ashraria's grief would have to be my priority. Because the people would need their Grand Duke, and Mother would need her son to lean on in the absence of her husband, and Joranna and Boreas and you or Nora, whichever of you survived, if one of you survived, would need your brother. And then it happened. You died. And then I got a second chance that I am not willing to waste. If you think that makes me a coward, call me a coward. If you think that makes me a fool, call me that too. But I will be the coward and the fool who brought my family home. I will be the coward and the fool who doesn't miss any more of the woman my baby sister is becoming because my damned health has deemed me more in need of protection than a girl of 115. I will be the coward and the fool who gets to watch the brother that I love best raise a child that he has wanted for years. You can hate me for this decision if you like, but you will not sway me from it. I am doing what I have to do to keep us safe. To keep everyone safe.
You watch Morlin briefly curl in on himself like he's trying to hold it together, and then adjust his posture to be straight and stiff and formal. You're right.
And why does that feel like a condemnation?
Because it is. You're right, Val. You are the Grand Duke, and I am not. You will never know what it is to give over half of your life to this war, only to have well-meaning fools pull it all out from underneath you when you are this close. You will never... You're the Grand Duke, and I'm not. But if you want to push this forward, it's over. I don't have a big brother anymore. And you are dead to me. He whips around and walks out of this room without a further word.
Val just buries his head in his hands. Morlin, what are you doing?
Feeling absolutely insane and going to try to find Elisha.
You manage to pull aside a member of the staff in this manor house, and they direct you to where Elisha's staying. Are you just walking in?
Yeah, probably. It's been a rough night.
This room is mostly dark, but when you open it, you find Elisha heavily bandaged, sitting up in bed with a book, and the lamp turned on her bedside table.
Morlin walks in and sits on the end of her bed and just puts his head in his hands. Hey, how you feeling?
Elisha blinks at you, a little startled. Her eyes are a little glassy. You get the feeling that she's on some kind of pain medication. But she gives you half of a grim smile with the side of her face that has not been burned and says, "Oh, never better, sir."
We've been to the edge of death together, Elisha, and I have a name.
She inclines her head at you and says, "My mistake. Thank you for checking in on me, Morlin."
Have you heard about what's going on, or...
She raises a hand and kind of touches her forehead. No, you'll have to forgive me. It's been hard to focus.
Astraria's in the middle of peace talks with Vogvolder, and my brother is going to give them everything.
Elisha sits up a little straighter and frowns, and then her face goes extremely tight with pain as she pulls at her burned nerves. What do you mean
I mean that I got strong-armed into coming to the negotiations just to sit there and watch him hand back every scrap of territory that we fought for weeks, basically sell the entire Order of Iluna down the river, and then scold me like a child when I brought up the fact that the Voldurans aren't going to pay for any of the damage they caused.
He can't just do that.
He can, and he will, because he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what it's like out there. I have watched so many people, good people, who have had their bodies and minds broken by this war. It has taken up over half my life. Fuck, it's taken my life. And the only reason I've made it this far is because I made the hard choices. Choices Val has never and will never have to make. He looks over at Elisha with this absolutely gutted expression. You know as well as I do that the things you see out there, they don't leave. They stick to parts of you.
Elisha takes the one of her hands that is not wrapped in bandages and clenches it into a fist in her lap. Yeah, I know that.
So what do? How do you keep going? You make hard choices. You rip off the parts of yourself that hurt, because if you don't, they will eat you alive. I have been tearing myself apart, chunk by bloody chunk, for the last century, and to sit there and be told that it was what, for nothing? He doesn't understand. And I thought at least Adhana would understand, but it's not her fault she's not thinking clearly.
No, of course it's not her fault. It's... Elisha bites her lip, nods, and says, well, obviously we can't let this happen.
No, we can't. Morlin knows that what he is about to suggest is terrible and could ruin his life if heard by the wrong people. Can I, insight check Elisha just to see how she's feeling right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
That was a 19.
Elisha is confused and somewhere between appalled and horrified. But more than that, she is angry. You watch that clenched fist in her lap almost tremble, and a bracket of pain and tension appear at the corner of her mouth.
He kneels down at the side of the bed and presses one hand against her uninjured cheek. I have to make a hard choice. Again. And I can't trust anyone. I can't even trust Adhana. What I need now, Elisha, is somebody I can trust.
There is a beat of silence. And then Elisha reaches out that hand that she's had clenched in her lap, puts it on your arm, and tilts her head almost quizzically. You need me.
I do. Valoran, we pick back up with you in the middle of the night. You are in the quarters you have been given for your stay at the Baron's Manor, and trancing sounds like a joke at this point. So, what are you doing?
I think he asked Adrielle to come sit with him for a bit.
She obliged, obviously, and is sitting at the vanity table in one corner of this room, slowly unbraiding and rebraiding her hair. Stop pacing, dear. You're gonna wear a hole in the carpet.
Frankly, the carpet is the least of my concerns.
She gets up and comes over to brace both hands on your shoulders. Hey, you did the best you could in there, okay? And you did a good job. I think we both know that you're not in this state because of the negotiations.
Oh no, of course, I did great. I'm disappointing my people, I'm disappointing my parents, I am letting the Volduran Empire run away with everything they want. I am dishonoring the memories of thousands of people, and my brother hates me. Fuck.
You are playing with the extremely shitty hand you've been dealt, Val. And anyone that would be disappointed in you for that is, well, wrong, for starters, and incredibly short-sighted. And Morlin doesn't hate you. You know how he is. He's lashing out. He just needs time. Give him a while to come to terms with all this. I'm sure you two will patch things up eventually. You always do.
I'm not exactly living a life that encourages patience, Adriel. Fuck. God damn it.
She reaches down and squeezes at your hand. I know, and I would do anything to make this okay for you. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Obviously I know.
Look, you need to rest, okay? Do you want me to get your medicine?
Yeah, Yes, I'm exhausted. If you could, that would be appreciated.
Adriel goes over to fuss around in one of your bags and comes back with your nightly regimen of medication and brings it over to you with a glass of water. I put some extra Valerian in there tonight. It'll help you trance, okay?
Thank you. What would I do without you?
It's a good thing you'll never have to find out. Do you want me to stay?
No, God, no. You've done enough. Thank you. I'm not fit for company right now.
Okay. She squeezes your hand one more time and then stands up and walks out.
Hey, Barry.
Hey, Al.
I want you to go over Morlin's plan, step by step.
Christ, okay. He's going to find a way to source a knife that is obviously of Volduran make.
Yeah, that's not hard. There are 3 Voldurans staying in the manor house, and Volduran generals and their aides walk around pretty heavily armed, and Volduran blacksmithing is very easy to spot. It's distinctive. Elisha, with as injured as she is and as low profile as she's kept, is not suspicious at all. She manages to grab a knife, and as the two of you have discussed before now, she asks Adhana if she could borrow you for a couple of hours to keep her company.
He is going to sit with Elisha until the wee hours of the morning, and then, as quietly as possible, make his way to his brother's room and check around to see if his bodyguard or anybody else is hanging around outside.
Tristan Tormare is sitting on a chair outside of Val's room, whittling.
Okay. He's going to cast Minor Illusion and use it to create a bunch of suspicious sounds directly outside the closest window. Just like scratching and tapping, making it sound like somebody's messing around outside.
Okay, I'm assuming you're hiding somewhere while this is happening. So I'm gonna roll for Tristan. Yeah, okay, that was a 3. He completely buys this. He goes over to the window, starts looking around, opens it. These noises continue, so he curses to himself, and he heads down the hallway.
As soon as he's gone, Morlin walks down the hall, stops outside the door, and just stares at it for a second. He unsheathes the knife and rips off a piece of himself that is so big and so intrinsic to who he is that it fundamentally breaks him. And then he goes inside.
Please roll me a stealth check.
A 9.
Val's passive perception is a 22.
Shit.
You open this door, and you hear a kind of muzzy, sleepy noise and a cough. Morlin? What's going on? Morlin, you are the equivalent of about 6 years old. You are out in the palace gardens with your brother and sister. You and Val are doing fencing practice, while Adhana sits a little ways away in the grass. She's weaving a little flower crown.
He grins over at Val and twirls his little kid-sized practice rapier around in his hand. Okay, first touch, right?
Val, the equivalent of about 8, with a gap in his teeth and his own kid-sized practice rapier, grins back at you and says, "Yeah, good luck, shrimp."
Don't call me a shrimp, ass clown!
From over in the grass, absolutely scandalized, Adhana says, "Mom, Morlin said a bad word."
Hey, Adhana, you ever hear that nobody likes a tattletale? And he's just gonna lunge at Val with his practice rapier.
Okay, I think we'll just roll a dex contest here.
Is my dexterity score the same when I was 6 as it is now?
No.
Okay, we'll just call it +0 then. 2.
Val rolled a 17. You lunge for him, and Val has had an extra 10 years of lessons on you. So he smacks your elbow and then lunges around to the side and gets you.
Ow, come on!
It's not my fault you have short arms, Morlin.
Stop calling me short! He's gonna try to hit him again. 16.
17 again. You lunge again, and this time Val just elbows you in the side and then smacks your leg with the rapier. I think he fully knocks you over.
Morlin kind of rolls over in the dirt and then sits up. And then he pretends like he scraped his knee, like he holds at his knee and just starts crying.
Val gets down on the ground and starts fussing over you, just like tugs at your knee and says, let me see.
As soon as he gets close enough, Morlin picks up his rapier and just jabs it into his chest. Gotcha, you're dead.
Val looks down at where you have jabbed him in the chest with this practice rapier and says, wow, your own brother. The next morning comes with very little fanfare. Have you been able to trance at all?
Not even a little bit. He's just laying in bed next to Adhana, staring at the wall, and has been for hours.
So it doesn't wake you up when a blood-curdling, agonized shriek splits the morning. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Did that wake Adhana up?
Yep. Adhana bolts upright, bleary-eyed the way that she is when she is startled into consciousness. What's going on?
He gets to his feet, and it's the hardest thing he's ever done. I don't know. Stay here. And then he's gonna go find Adriel.
Down the hall, the door to your brother Valoran's room is open. Tristan Tormare is backed against the wall opposite it with his hand over his mouth. And Adriel has collapsed to her knees in the doorway.
Morlin looks at them. He does not look at what's in the bed. Oh god. Oh my god. Has anyone checked on the Volduran delegation? Where are they? I'm I'm gonna go. And he runs the fuck out of there as fast as possible.
Are you actually going to go check on the Valoran delegation?
Yeah. If they could take the blame for this, all the better.
Okay. Do me a favor and roll survival, I guess?
21.
You run down to the guest rooms where the Valoran delegation have been put up, and they are open and empty. You see the evidence of people that packed light, getting their things together hastily. The beds are unmade, sheets are strewn across the floor. These rooms look like a hurricane blew through them.
Fucking cowards. He turns around and goes back upstairs.
There are staff of this manor house swarming around the room that your brother was staying in. Rhys Tormare is in the middle of it all, kind of surveying the scene, scrubbing a hand over his face, looking wrecked. You hear heaving sobs coming from Adriel's room. Alasha has come out into the hallway, standing unsteadily.
Morlin makes eye contact with her and nods.
Adhana is standing right outside the door, looking in at the flurry of activity, biting on one of her nails. She looks extremely shaken.
Morlin walks back over into the crowd and looks around at everybody standing there. Well, predictably, the Voldurans are already gone.
Alasha, from her own doorway, says, "Those bastards."
I can send word back to camp that we're calling off the ceasefire. Maybe we can get them before they get over enemy lines. I don't know what to do.
Adhana frowns and gets you by the elbow and says, "Here, let's give them all some space. Can we talk?"
Yeah, Talking is something I can do right now.
Adhana leads you back into the room that the two of you are staying in and kind of guides you to sit on the bed. Okay. First of all, are you all right? I know this is... No, you're not all right. That's stupid.
I'm fine.
She frowns and says, "No, of course you're not here." And she puts her arms around you and just tucks your head under her chin for a second.
Oh, yeah, he does break down for a second there. Just 2 big sobs, and that's it. But then he straightens his posture and sits back up.
Adhana kisses the top of your head and then draws back and sits on the bed next to you. Okay. I hate to ask, I know we're all feeling fragile. But did you see anything last night?
Oh, he's fully dissociating, staring at nothing. What would I have seen? I sat with Alasha until she took her trance, and then I came back to our room and went to bed.
Adhana, while you were talking, started to kind of stroke her hand down your back. And she goes, still, as you say that. "Sweetheart, I'm talking about after you left Alasha's room. I went in to check on you, and Alasha was already taking her trance, and you weren't there."
No, I left Alasha's room and I came straight back to ours.
No, I went to check on you, and you weren't there. It must have been at least half an hour before you got...
I cast suggestion. DC 18 whiz save. He puts one hand in his pocket to grip at his wand, and then reaches out the other to close around Adhana's shoulder. Addie, that's That's not what happened. You must have been dreaming. I was with you all night.
Adhana uses one of her portent rolls. 19 was safe. She bats your hand off of her shoulder, eyebrows drawn together, wispy threads of magic dangling off of her fingers. That's not true. That's not what happened.
I cast Dominate Person at 7th level. That'll be another whiz save.
That's an 8.
Nope. Morlin leans forward and kisses her on the forehead as the somatic component of this Dominate Person spell. Addie, come on, you're acting crazy. You're worrying about things outside of your control, and that level of stress is bad for the baby, so come on, let's just sit down. Just stop asking questions. In fact, forget we even had this conversation.
Adhana looks betrayed and then confused as this Dominate Person spell washes over her. Sorry, dear, what were we? Oh, God, Val.
Yeah. Val. Somebody has to write our parents, and Nora, and Boreas, and Adhana. I'll handle that. You just try to rest, okay?
Okay. Are you sure you're alright?
Addie being alright is my whole thing. Lay down. I've got this.
Okay, I love you.
I love you too. He turns around and walks out. He feels disgusting for what just happened.
You walk back out into the hallway. You don't hear sobbing anymore from Adriel's room, but the door is still firmly shut and you hear hushed conversation. Alasha has gone back into her room. Reese is still directing people around the crime scene that Val's room has become.
It's damage control at this point. He's gonna go knock on Adriel's door.
From inside, you hear, "Yeah, come in."
Cool, awesome, going in.
Adriel, still in her nightgown, is sitting on one chair, and across from her is sitting Tristan Tormare. Tristan has his head fully in his hands, and Adriel has visibly been crying.
Morlin looks back and forth between the two of them and swallows really hard. Well, there's the next step to be taken here. It's not the step that Val would have wanted, but we all saw where the things that Val wanted got him. Let me do what needs to be done.
Tristan, so with his head in his hands, makes a raw, wounded animal noise and says, "I fucking heard those bastards last night. I went down to check. I just... Fuck. I should've..." And Adriel looks angry. She shakes her head viciously and says, "Those pieces of shit. All this because he wouldn't capitulate to enough of their demands. This..." She looks at you, her eyes still rimmed in blue, bloodshot. "We should have listened to you. I can't believe this. You know, he died thinking you were angry at him." Morlin, I need you to tell me that they're gonna pay for this.
Morlin crouches down in front of her and gets both of her hands in both of his and prays for all he is worth. that she does not notice the blood under his fingernails. I swear, whoever is responsible for this will never stop paying for it.
And that's it for us this time.
My god, I'm sad. I'm just sad.
Yeah, you can say that one again, bud. Oh, fuck.
Anyway, folks, it's about the generational trauma every time
On Compelled Duel.
Hey everybody, Barry here with the postscript, just clearing up a couple housekeeping things here at the end of the episode. As usual, I'm going to go ahead and plug our various social medias. You can find us on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok at Compelled Duel. We also have a lot of other cool stuff going on. We have an official website, an official Spotify profile. You can find all of that stuff linked on our social media pages. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, we ask that you head on over to patreon.com/compelledduel and take a look at all of our cool patron perks. Starting at just $2 a month, you can get access to all sorts of things, like early access to episodes, access to special bonus content, and even exclusive clues for our upcoming new campaign. If you want to support us in ways other than pledging to the Patreon, we ask that if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that you leave us a rating and a review, because that helps get the show's name out there, helps us widen our listener base. And the easiest thing you can do to help us out, if you like what you're hearing here on Compelled Duel, is to tell a friend about it. And if they enjoy it, ask them to tell a friend as well. Word of mouth advertising is the best tool we have at our disposal. Our next bonus episode is going to be going up on Friday, September 2nd, 2022 at noon Eastern Standard Time. Same time as always, but we moved. We're in a different time zone now. And of course, if you're a member of our Patreon, you'll be getting early access to that episode on Thursday, September 1st. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.